For years, Harley Davidson has been more than a motorcycle brand. It's been a symbol of freedom, rebellion, and American grit. But today, that legacy is under fire. Sales are collapsing, loyal riders feel betrayed, and after months of silence, the CEO finally responded. But was it an apology or a carefully crafted distraction? This isn't just a story about one brand, it's about what happens when a company forgets who made it great. Stay with me, because Harley's next move could decide whether it rides again or disappears into history. The speech heard around the biker world. In what was meant to be a moment of damage control, Harley Davidson's CEO Jochen Zeitz delivered a corporate statement that was supposed to steer Harley back on course. It ended up splitting the brand's already divided community even further. Zeitz acknowledged the backlash Harley had been facing over its political stances, particularly its corporate emphasis on diversity, equity, and inclusion, also known as DEI. He emphasized a new direction, promising that Harley Davidson would refocus on traditional motorcycle values and recommit to the community that made the brand what it was. "We remain dedicated to listening to all riders," he said, closing with the phrase that had once stirred unity and pride, "United, we ride." But this time, that message didn't land. Almost immediately, both supporters and critics saw through the statement. Many longtime Harley riders, already disillusioned, felt it was too little, too late. Others noted the glaring contradictions. While the company claimed it was moving away from DEI, its website still highlighted its corporate social responsibility goals. Sustainability pledges, environmental ratings, and investor-first ESG priorities remained plastered across Harley's investor presentations. And then there was the elephant in the garage, the continued push for electric motorcycles. Despite saying Harley would refocus on tradition, Zeitz doubled down on electrification by funneling more resources into Livewire, Harley's electric spin-off. Riders who loved the visceral rumble of a V-twin engine were being told indirectly that the future would be quiet, green, and sanitized. For a brand built on rebellion, grit, and noise, this felt like a betrayal hiding behind a press release. The speech wasn't just a PR move gone wrong, it was a moment of revelation. Harley Davidson had crossed a cultural line, and no amount of corporate spin could walk it back. For decades, Harley was seen as the ultimate expression of freedom, individuality, and rebellion. With one carefully scripted statement, it became something else. Just another company trying to manage a crisis, and in the process, losing what made it iconic. And what came next revealed just how deep the cracks in Harley's foundation really were. Riders break the Brotherhood. This wasn't just a boycott, it was a full-blown breakup between Harley Davidson and the riders who had once considered themselves part of a brotherhood. The emotional response to Harley's cultural transformation was more than disappointment, it was heartbreak. Lifelong riders who had inked the brand's name on their skin, who passed bikes down through generations, were now turning their backs on the company in disgust. The online revolt was raw and personal. Videos of longtime bikers removing their Harley badges, throwing merchandise in the trash, and even selling their bikes flooded social media platforms. On Facebook, communities that once shared ride maps and tuning tips began hosting angry debates and farewell posts. One video, viewed over 500,000 times, showed a Vietnam War veteran auctioning off his custom-built Harley with a simple caption, "I don't know this company anymore." But it wasn't just about electric bikes or DEI language, it was about identity. For decades, Harley Davidson stood as a symbol of rebellion, of blue-collar pride, of American grit. It was the bike of outlaws, the soundtrack of open highways, the brand that didn't care what anyone thought. So when riders perceived Harley as caving to corporate pressure or pushing political agendas, the disillusionment ran deep. The emotional backlash soon turned into action. Biker rallies saw declining attendance when Harley sponsored booths. In some cases, riders refused to show up at all. Forums began compiling lists of alternative brands: Indian, Royal Enfield, Honda, any company that felt closer to the spirit Harley had left behind. But the riders weren't the only ones feeling the impact. While corporate tried to patch up its image, the people on the ground, the ones selling the bikes, servicing them, and running local dealerships, were left to pick up the pieces. The dealership meltdown. While headlines focused on the CEO's speech and the rider revolt, another crisis was unfolding in silence. The collapse of Harley's dealership network. These were not just stores, they were community hubs, often run by second or third generation families who had spent decades building trust with local riders. And now they were watching their showrooms empty out. Customers who once came in weekly to chat, browse, and buy had vanished. Sales reps reported spending entire weekends without a single walk-in. Parts departments sat idle. And in some cases, dealerships were forced to offer steep discounts, slashing prices by thousands of dollars just to get bikes off the floor. The situation quickly turned desperate. Inventory began to pile up. Models that once had waiting lists now gathered dust. One dealership in the Midwest went viral for offering free leather jackets, helmets, and a one-year service package with every purchase, an unheard-of promotion in Harley's golden days. It reeked of panic. Behind the scenes, dealership owners voiced growing frustration with corporate leadership. Many said they were blindsided by the direction the company had taken. They felt abandoned, caught between angry customers and a corporate boardroom that seemed more interested in investor presentations than local rider communities. The dealership meltdown was more than a logistical issue. It exposed a deep failure in Harley's chain of trust. The people who once served as the bridge between brand and customer were now disillusioned, discouraged, and in some cases on the verge of closing their doors for good. And as the dealerships faltered, Wall Street finally took notice. From brand crisis to financial catastrophe. Once considered one of the most iconic and stable American companies, Harley Davidson was now facing a full-blown financial unraveling. As rider sentiment turned and dealerships struggled, investor confidence plummeted. Within weeks of the CEO's speech, Harley's stock had taken a steep dive. Analysts downgraded their ratings. Shareholders began to jump ship. Quarterly earnings reports painted an even grimmer picture. Motorcycle unit sales in the United States dropped sharply. Revenue fell well below expectations. Market share, once comfortably owned by Harley, was being eaten away by competitors, especially Indian and various foreign manufacturers. Even the Livewire spin-off, once billed as Harley's innovation engine, was underperforming. As pressure mounted, the economic damage rippled outward. Harley began to lay off staff at factories across the Midwest. Entire departments were downsized. Towns that had long depended on Harley for jobs and local business traffic were suddenly facing economic uncertainty. Gear shops, local diners, and mechanics saw sharp declines in customers. Some were forced to shut their doors. This wasn't just a financial problem, it was a cultural reckoning. Harley Davidson, once the poster child of American grit, had become a cautionary tale of brand disconnection and identity crisis. The consequences were no longer theoretical, they were tangible, measurable, and devastating. But as the numbers kept falling, the real question remained. Could Harley stop the bleeding? Or was this just the beginning of a long ride into irrelevance? The answer may lie in the hands of their rivals. Because while Harley floundered, other brands were quietly building an empire. Indian's revenge. While Harley Davidson was wrestling with its identity, Indian Motorcycles was quietly doing everything Harley once did, only better. While Harley made headlines for culture war controversies and boardroom politics, Indian made motorcycles. Real motorcycles, the kind riders actually wanted to ride. Indian's brand strategy was refreshingly simple. Blend heritage with performance and do it without the political baggage. The company doubled down on classic cruiser aesthetics, delivering aggressive styling, thunderous V-twin engines, and a refined riding experience that didn't feel like it was engineered by a committee. Models like the Chief, Scout, and Challenger embraced vintage design cues while integrating modern tech like ride modes, touchscreen displays, and cornering traction control. The result? Bikes that looked like legends but rode like the future. But Indian didn't just build better bikes, it read the market better too. While Harley was chasing ESG scores and spinning off electric divisions, Indian was quietly gaining ground in the exact segment Harley was losing: traditional cruiser riders. Riders who once bled Harley orange and black began to make the switch. Forums filled with once loyal Harley owners now featured glowing reviews of the Indian Scout Bobber. Biker rallies and rides, once dominated by Harleys, started seeing clusters of Thunderstroke-powered machines leading the pack. And Indian never made a show of it. There were no political statements, no corporate manifestos, and no public spats. Indian let its bikes speak for themselves. The brand didn't have to claim to be authentic, it was authentic. That alone was enough to turn heads. Then came the numbers. Indian's U.S. market share began to inch upward, dealership networks expanded, and waiting lists for popular models grew. In an era where many brands tried to manufacture cool, Indian simply earned it. But Indian wasn't the only one making moves. Just over the horizon, foreign competition was closing in and fast. The global cruiser takeover. The idea that cruiser motorcycles were an all-American domain is now a myth. Over the past decade, global brands have not only entered the cruiser segment, they've reshaped it. For Harley Davidson, this is more than just competition. It's an existential threat. Because now riders around the world are discovering they don't need to pay premium prices or pledge allegiance to a fading legacy to experience that perfect blend of style, comfort, and performance. Triumph, the legendary British brand, has become a standout example. With its Bonneville Bobber and Speedmaster models, Triumph fused classic design with modern performance in a way that few other brands could manage. These bikes evoke the same retro charm as a vintage Harley, but with more refined handling, cutting-edge electronics, and lighter frames. They attract not just nostalgic riders, but also younger enthusiasts looking for timeless style without the maintenance drama. Triumph's adventure and sport touring lines, such as the Tiger and Rocket series, have also eaten into Harley's market share, particularly among riders who once might have considered a Harley for long-distance comfort. Meanwhile, Royal Enfield, once dismissed as a relic of the past, has reinvented itself as the budget king of vintage style. Models like the Interceptor 650 and the Meteor 350 deliver classic aesthetics and reliable engines at nearly half the price of most Harleys. For riders priced out of the American cruiser market, Royal Enfield offers a doorway into motorcycling culture that doesn't feel like a compromise. Their success, especially among new riders in international markets, underscores a simple truth: legacy means nothing without accessibility. Then there's BMW. Known more for its sport tours and adventure bikes, BMW entered the cruiser market with the R18, a head-on challenge to Harley's touring lineup. With its exposed shaft drive, massive boxer engine, and minimalist retro lines, the R18 looks like it could have rolled out of a 1914 garage. But make no mistake, this is German precision engineering with 21st century tech. And while Harley struggles with reliability concerns, BMW's reputation for quality and performance gives it a competitive edge in long-distance and premium touring segments. But just when Harley thought it could still dominate American-made pride, a familiar storm reappeared, this time from the east. Japan strikes back. It happened in the 1980s, and it's happening again. Back then, Japanese manufacturers like Honda, Yamaha, and Kawasaki nearly crushed Harley Davidson by producing more reliable, more affordable, and frankly, better performing motorcycles. Today, those same companies are once again reclaiming ground, this time in the cruiser market that Harley once dominated uncontested. Honda's Rebel series has become a go-to bike for new riders. The Rebel 500 and 1100 models combine minimalist design with torque-rich engines, light handling, and wallet-friendly price tags. They're the spiritual opposite of the bloated, chrome-heavy machines Harley insists on producing. But for many riders, especially first-timers or those in urban settings, the Rebels represent everything they need: performance, affordability, and practicality. Then there's the Goldwing, Honda's touring flagship. While Harley's touring bikes have struggled with recalls, outdated infotainment systems, and rider comfort complaints, the Goldwing continues to dominate with unmatched technology, smooth power delivery, and class-leading comfort. For cross-country riders who value long-haul reliability, it's the obvious choice. Kawasaki's Vulcan series, especially the Vulcan S, has carved out a niche for riders who want a muscular look with Japanese dependability. Its sport bike-derived engine, adjustable ergonomics, and crisp throttle response have made it a favorite among those who find Harley's cruisers too sluggish or too bulky. Likewise, Yamaha's Bolt and V-Max appeal to riders seeking a blend of raw power and retro-inspired design. These bikes don't try to mimic Harley, they innovate on their own terms. The Japanese approach is clear: offer high-quality, performance-rich machines at reasonable prices. That strategy is now paying off, big time. Younger riders who can't afford a $30,000 Harley but want a bike with personality are turning toward these Japanese options in droves. And it's not just about price, it's about ease of maintenance, fuel efficiency, lighter weight, and a riding experience that doesn't require sacrificing half a garage to store the machine. And just like that, while competitors surged and the core audience drifted, Harley's electric revolution became its most visible misfire. Mixed signals, missed opportunity. You can't say you're going back to your roots while still chasing investors. Harley Davidson's leadership claims they're listening. They say they're returning to the brand's core. The rebellious spirit, the wind-in-your-face grit, the made-in-America legacy that made Harley what it was. But while the words sound nostalgic, the actions feel corporate. It's the kind of contradiction that doesn't just confuse riders, it erodes trust. In one breath, Harley's CEO declares a renewed focus on the traditional motorcycle community. In the next, the company touts its environmental, social, and governance performance to appease institutional investors. Riders hear one thing while Wall Street hears another, and that's a problem. Because when a brand sends mixed signals, customers begin to wonder if any of it is real. Can a company really say it's going back to basics while doubling down on electric motorcycles that its audience never asked for? Can it claim to stand for freedom while still publishing polished statements that read like they were written by a hedge fund committee? This disconnect between brand image and brand behavior isn't subtle. It's everywhere. The showroom floor features classic-looking bikes, but the press releases hype up EV development and sustainability metrics. Harley's social media channels try to spotlight grit and chrome, but its corporate website leans into green tech jargon and investor-centric language. It feels less like a motorcycle company and more like a tech startup wearing leather. Riders notice. They're not blind to the shift. Longtime Harley loyalists don't want empty words. They want authenticity. They want to feel like Harley still gets them. But the more Harley tries to be everything to everyone, the more it becomes nothing to anyone. It's trying to sell nostalgia to riders and ESG scores to investors, but instead of bridging that gap, it's lost in the middle. The result? Riders are walking away. Not because they expect Harley to never evolve, but because they expect it to evolve in a way that still feels like Harley. What they're seeing instead is a brand that's lost its compass, torn between two audiences that don't understand each other. And in trying to please both, it's slowly pleasing no one. But this confusion isn't just philosophical, it's structural. And it gets worse when you realize what's really under the hood. Because behind the mixed messaging is an even deeper betrayal. One that strikes at the very heart of Harley's identity. The death of Made in America. Harley used to sell patriotism, now it sells imported parts. There was a time when buying a Harley Davidson wasn't just about the ride, it was a political statement, a cultural stamp, a declaration that you were choosing American steel, American sweat, and American roads over foreign flash. The phrase "Made in the USA" wasn't just stamped on the bike, it was etched into the rider's identity. But today, that promise feels broken. Increasingly, the guts of Harley Davidson motorcycles are coming from outside American borders. Engines, electronics, transmissions, even control modules. Many are now sourced from overseas suppliers. And while Harley still assembles many of its bikes in the United States, more and more components are quietly being shipped in from abroad. This shift didn't happen overnight. It crept in year by year, driven by cost-cutting measures and globalized supply chains. But as the sourcing drifted away from American soil, so did the trust. The illusion of domestic craftsmanship became harder to maintain, especially for riders who once bought Harleys to support American jobs and values. When they lift the seat or check the label, they see components stamped with countries they didn't expect. And with that realization comes a feeling of betrayal. It gets worse. In towns across the Midwest and South, where Harley once operated bustling factories and supported local economies, closures have left communities struggling. Jobs have disappeared. Local diners, repair shops, and gear outlets that once relied on Harley traffic have faded. What once made Harley feel like a hometown hero now feels like a multinational ghost. The irony is brutal. Harley's branding is still draped in American flags, bald eagles, and freedom slogans. But the business model is globalized, outsourced, and often faceless. You can't wrap a product in patriotism and then manufacture its soul somewhere else. That disconnect is jarring, and it matters more than ever in an era where consumers are demanding transparency and alignment between brand values and business practices. The bottom line? Harley didn't just outsource parts, it outsourced its identity. And the cost wasn't just economic, it was cultural, it was spiritual. But even now, not all hope is lost. Because for every mistake made, there's a path that could still bring Harley roaring back to life. How to rebuild the Harley myth. If Harley wants a comeback, it doesn't need a new direction. It needs an old one. Let's be clear, Harley Davidson doesn't need to become something new. It needs to remember what made it iconic in the first place, and modernize that. The myth of Harley was never about innovation for innovation's sake. It was about connection. It was about the feeling of the open road, the sound of a V-twin engine, and the brotherhood of the ride. So what does a real comeback look like? It starts with making motorcycles that everyday people can actually afford. In the past, entry-level Harleys like the Sportster made it possible for younger riders to get into the lifestyle. But over the past decade, prices have climbed into luxury territory, cutting off the next generation of riders before they ever got the chance. If Harley wants to grow again, it must offer stripped-down, badass bikes that deliver attitude without the premium markup. It also means leaning back into the power and sound that defined Harley's brand for over a century. Forget the EV marketing for a moment. Go back to the V-twin, the rumble, the ride, because that's what the riders are still looking for. That's what Indian understands. That's what Ducati figured out when it revitalized its heritage with modern performance. Ducati's Scrambler line didn't reinvent the wheel. It reintroduced it with soul. Harley must also abandon the Wall Street first mentality that's haunted its decision-making. It needs to build motorcycles for riders, not for shareholders. That means tightening quality control, empowering dealerships, and investing in domestic manufacturing, even if it costs more upfront. Because in the long run, the brand value of built here, made right is worth more than quarterly profit bumps. And let's talk about branding. Harley doesn't need slogans, it needs stories. The best campaigns don't sell bikes, they sell freedom, they sell rebellion, they sell escape. Harley must stop trying to be safe. It needs to get dangerous again. In tone, in spirit, in design. But Harley wasn't alone in facing this challenge. In fact, it was just one domino in a chain of cultural brand collapses. The Bud Light domino effect. The story of Bud Light in 2023 is already a case study in marketing miscalculation. One partnership, one post, one perceived departure from the core identity of the brand. And suddenly, an empire was burning. In Bud Light's case, it wasn't the partnership itself that caused the outrage. It was the suddenness of the shift, the inconsistency with decades of brand tone, and the perception that the company was pandering to one audience while disregarding another. Sound familiar? Harley Davidson's pivot sparked a similar reaction. The pattern is eerily consistent across these brands. A beloved company makes a fast, values-driven move without preparing its core audience. The result isn't unity, it's division. It's not about the values being wrong. It's about the execution feeling rushed, inauthentic, and disconnected from the people who've supported the brand for years. Disney, another cultural giant, found itself in the middle of a political firestorm when it took strong stances on social issues. While some applauded its position, others viewed it as a betrayal of family-focused neutrality. Target faced a similar storm when its marketing campaign sparked controversy over inclusivity products in stores, leading to backlash from both sides of the political aisle. These brands became battlegrounds, not because their values were new, but because their messaging didn't match their legacy. This is what happens when corporations lose sight of what their audience sees in them. Consumers don't just buy products, they buy identity. They choose brands that reflect something about who they are. And when that mirror suddenly distorts, people don't just stop buying. They get angry. They feel tricked. The Harley, Bud Light, and Disney stories are all part of a larger lesson. Public trust isn't just earned once. It's re-earned with every decision, every campaign, every pivot. And when brands move faster than their communities are ready for, the result isn't progress. It's whiplash. Still, not every brand caught in a culture war collapsed. Some survived. Some even thrived. The brands that survived the culture war. Some companies didn't just survive outrage, they built empires from it. While Harley Davidson struggled with aligning its messaging to its core identity, other brands managed to strike that delicate balance between staying relevant and staying real. Chick-fil-A is perhaps the most polarizing and consistent example. It has faced years of criticism for its corporate values, yet it has never strayed from its message or tried to rebrand itself for political convenience. The result? A fiercely loyal customer base that knows exactly what the brand stands for, even if they don't always agree with it. Clarity builds trust, even in disagreement. Ducati, once teetering on the edge of collapse in the early 2000s, found its comeback not by chasing trends, but by refining its identity. Instead of becoming a tech-first brand with no soul, Ducati doubled down on heritage while integrating just enough modern performance to satisfy new riders. The Scrambler series brought in a fresh demographic without alienating the racing purists. The result? A brand reborn without compromise. Then there's Patagonia, often celebrated for its social and environmental activism. The key difference? Authenticity. From the beginning, Patagonia's environmental message has been embedded in its product design, its supply chain, its hiring practices, and its customer community. It didn't pivot to activism. It was activism. That authenticity resonates even with people who don't share every political view Patagonia holds. Because what matters most isn't the politics. It's whether the message matches the messenger. These brands prove something powerful. You can survive the culture war. You can even take a stand, but only if your audience believes you mean it, and only if you never forget who you're really talking to. So here's the question you're left with. Will Harley Davidson roar back to life, engine rumbling, flag flying, and soul intact? Or will it ride off into memory, just another American legend that lost its way? You decide, and let us know your thoughts in the comment below.